Russia conquers Ukraine after a nasty 3-month conflict. China, realizing the time is soon, invades Taiwan while the world is busy looking at Europe. America doesn't directly want to start a conflict with China, so blockades China of oil and all trade through the Straits of Malacca. China cannot survive as a nation without ocean-bearing trade, and so the Chinese attacked U.S. allies like Vietnam and eventually India. The Chinese support North Korean invasion of South Korea. The Chinese get assurances of a Russian invasion of Eastern Europe and NATO, which does not occur. Putin would like to see the Chinese and Americans fight each other to weakness. The conflict isn't a total war. It's a limited one with armies numbering in the millions, but no draft. The advantage lies with the infantry in this conflict, and the Chinese don't fight super effectively, so their armies get bogged down upon attacking their opponents. There are immense social pressures to draft, but all sides are worrying instituting a draft would result in revolts. Countries use social media to pump out lots of propaganda. The internet goes into a war frenzy, and normal people, probably including yourself, have been misled to believe that the war is totally justified and necessary. America doesn't technically declare war on China per se, but millions of Americans are fighting in Asia with American allies. The great powers have agreements not to use nukes in case there are no bombings on countries proper. Countries instead use cyber and economic attacks. The Chinese pull out of the dollar system, which results in a global collapse in standard of living. People hate the world and seethe, but governments use wartime laws to prevent dissent. An important factor is that we would see the breakdown of the global agricultural system. And we're seeing this today with a lot of analysts thinking we're going to have famine in much of the world by the end of this year. But the world's agricultural system is very intertwined, and so political problems result in mass famine and inability to move fertilizer around and starvation in food insecure countries, and this would just get remarkably terrible if we had a war or political disturbance. With the exception of the United Kingdom, Eastern Europe, and Scandinavia, most of Europe doesn't support America in this conflict. The US pulls troops out of Europe as punishment, and the financial crash hits Europe hard, with radical parties and revolts across the continent. Skirmishes start between Poland and Russia that escalate into a Russian invasion of Poland that fails as Russian soldiers refuse to fight. Russia falls into revolution and civil war. China falls into civil war as the war ends. The Treaty of Tokyo solidifies the borders of the New World Order. Far-right candidates are elected into power in India and the US, which cause left-wing urban revolts, which are countered by right-wing militias, finally with right-wing governments cracking down. The worst possible option is that these countries become military dictatorships. Across Eurasia, we see warlords rise to power as atrocities like genocide against ethnic minorities and conflicts that kill millions. We now end up with cascading effects. How do you predict the Vietnam or Korean wars from the death of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand? As conflict begets conflict over the decades, we start to see a new world order establish itself. Whether it's a new caliphate, a Chinese prophet who founds a new religion, and the people who have seen so much horror will start to have families again. People will forget all the big ideas they once believed and settle down for order. The biotech industry will usher in a new revolution as the next genre of music comes from the garages of Phoenix, Arizona.